What is up, guys? Stark here, and today I'm bringing you the Season 9 installment of my annual Walking Dead Death Predictions video. I want to try to get through this year's video as quick as possible, so I'm just going to stick to the main cast and not go super in-depth with all the characters like Scott or Rod or whoever else we really don't care about that much. I'm going to start with the Grimes family, Rick and Judith, and then from there work my way down the cast list using my typical yes, no, maybe system that I have used for the last few years now. Some characters I have a decent amount of things to say about, and then some characters I'm going to pretty much say, nah, they're not going to die, just so I can kind of keep the train moving and not make this a 40-minute video. I hope you guys enjoy, and feel free to leave your death predictions down below in the comments section. So let's get started with Andrew Lincoln, who plays Rick Grimes. Alright, well, we might as well start with the elephant in the room. Unless you've been living under a rock, you've probably heard that Andrew Lincoln is departing from the cast this season, and this will be the last year that Rick Grimes is a member of The Walking Dead. I personally, some people think it's a smoke screen or a attention grab or whatever. I don't think that's the case. I do think Rick is going to die this season, or at the very least, go away. Maybe get picked up by that helicopter, but I'd say it's 99% Rick is going to die, and then the other 1% is he gets captured or just goes missing or whatever, but I don't think the show would do that. I just think they're going to close Rick's story up. I don't know how it's going to happen. I could see I'm assuming the Whisperers will probably be involved. I hope it's not something stupid like a walker bite or that really bad theory going around that's saying that Maggie or Darryl are going to kill him so they can get to Negan and kill Negan. But I definitely do think it's going to happen. I think if they really want to introduce the Whisperers in a big-time fashion, they could have Rick be one of the citizens of the communities to have his head put on a pike. But I also don't see that happening because Rick's not dumb enough to let himself get cornered in a situation like that. So I really don't know how it's going to happen. I hope the show doesn't screw it up. They already are screwing up because they killed off Carl for no reason, and now his dad's leaving, and we could have slotted Carl up into Rick's spot like the comics are kind of setting up doing. It just would have been a bit early, and I wouldn't be as upset about it. But yeah, Rick's going to die. It's going to be a big-time gut-wrencher. I don't know how they're going to kind of go on without a Grimes male lead running things. But yeah, I guess we're going to have to wait and see. I do think Rick's going to die. He'll be the main death from Season 9. Alright, next up is Darryl. Darryl is 110% safe. Norman Reedus just signed a huge contract with AMC to take over as the lead since Andrew Lincoln is leaving. And although I hate to predict things based on what happens contractually with the actors outside of the show, this season's had a bunch of leaked things about it, and it's hard to ignore. It's just a given. Darryl's fine. There's zero chance on this planet that the show kills off Rick and Darryl and another character I'm going to get to next, I believe, in the same season, unless it's set to be the last season of the show, which it's not. Darryl's going to be the new headliner. I don't know how I feel about that. I'll probably get into it in a different video that's not a death predictions video, but yeah, Darryl is fine. There's zero chance anything's going to happen to Darryl this season, and probably for another one that I could see probably hanging around until the show is ready to close on up. Alright, next up is Maggie Rhee. Maggie's a bit of an interesting case, and thank God is the last one that I have to reference outside contract issues with the actors for. I do think Maggie's story is going to come to a close this season, at least for the time being, but I'm not necessarily sure how she would die. The trailer from Comic-Con shows that baby Herschel was already born, and it showed Maggie holding him, so there's zero chance that she has any problems with childbirth, like some of the context clues from earlier seasons were leading on that she might have. Lauren Cohan was just another act. She wasn't getting paid what she wanted, and this annoys me because the show handed Norman Reedus $20 million, I think, but couldn't find a way to pony up money to keep Lauren Cohan. So she's set to only appear in 6 episodes this season. That was already leaked. Like I said, I hate referencing things like that, but she's only contractually obligated to show up in 6 episodes this season. So I'm not sure how or if she'll die, if it'll be another Whisperers thing. She could also end up with her head on a pike, and maybe Rick dies in a different way, and Maggie could be the big one to go down from that. I don't know. At the very least, I couldn't see them doing it for Rick. I don't think it would make sense for Rick, but I could see Maggie depart. There's those characters that came back on the second half of Season 8. Their names escape me. They showed up in the one episode, and they traded some supplies for the key to mankind or whatever that book was. I could see Maggie going with them, maybe. I don't know. I really don't know. All these contract things it's tearing the show up, and it's kind of a shame. I really don't know. So right now I'm uncertain. I'm going to list Maggie as a maybe. If I absolutely had to pick one way or the other, I would say she probably would die. But I'm hoping that for a character like Maggie, the show finds a way to kind of leave it open-ended in case Lauren Cohan wants to come back to the show, because she's working on a lot of outside projects right now. So I'm going to say maybe, leaning towards her dying, and that would leave us with two huge character deaths in the first half of the season with Rick and Maggie, our main protagonist, and then another top 3, 4 most important character in the show, and a community leader in Maggie, who's been there since season 2. So I hope we can find a way to keep Maggie along. I already know for a fact Andy Lincoln's about done with the show, so Rick probably won't be back. So I hope they can find some way to salvage Maggie staying, but I'm not too optimistic about it. All right, next up is Michonne. If Maggie and Rick both go, like I'm assuming they will, I would assume that Michonne will survive and become the new leading lady of the show, a role that's been held by Maggie for many seasons now. I can see the actress Denai Guerrera maybe wanting to move on after this season because of, one, a lot of people leaving: Andrew Lincoln, Lauren Cohan, Stephen Yeun, Michael Cudlitz, Chandler Riggs. So a lot of characters that she worked with a lot over the course of the series leaving. I could see her wanting to move on because she's a big success in films outside of The Walking Dead. But I do think she will survive this season and help both take care of Judith, along with being the likely new second in command, along with Darryl, after Rick and most likely Maggie both kick the dust. So I will say Michonne is safe for season 9. If she does go, I would think it'd probably be season 10 at the earliest. Okay, now we've moved on to Carol Pelletier, and kind of like Michonne, I can't see Carol going anywhere if both Rick and Maggie go this season. The show needs recognizable characters from the early seasons, and characters like Carol, Darryl, and Michonne kind of fit the bill to still keep us connected to places from earlier seasons like the farm and the prison. I think Carol is going to kind of shift into Michonne's comic role and become a major leader over at the Kingdom and become a major influence over all the communities. I think she's safe in season 9 and beyond for the time being, and I think this also marks the first time I've ever said that Carol has almost no chance of dying in one of my death predictions videos before, so that's kind of cool. Alright, here's a crazy fact for you. If Rick and Maggie both go down this season like I'm expecting them to, or at the very least go away, the only characters that are still alive, that are still on the show, that have been on for longer than Tara would be Darryl, Carol, Michonne, Judith, and kind of Morgan. But Morgan's really not on The Walking Dead right now. That's a pretty short and surprising list, and when I looked that up, I was kind of like, really? I'm just going to front by saying I'm not a super huge fan of Tara's character. I've been predicting her to die for a while now. And I'm going to do it again, spoiler alert. But I don't know, she's just been around. She's been around since early in season 4, and what has she really done outside of crack a few kind of funny one-liners once in a while and act as the bridge to Oceanside for the other communities? And after the time skip, based on the trailer, she's no longer going to be needed as the bridge to Oceanside because it looks like everybody's all integrated. So Tara's, despite being like 6th or 7th on the casting list and being around for multiple seasons now, she's really not that important. I think the show could take her out if they wanted to do another big time kind of recognizable character death after Rick and Maggie go, which I don't know if they're going to want to do that. But they could kind of take her out and kill like a very recognizable character for people that have been watching the show for a while and really not suffer too much storytelling wise, because Tara really does not do a whole lot. If she did go, I would think she'd be a prime candidate to go when the Whisperers kill off 5, 6 people with the heads on the spikes like they do in the comics. I don't really know who's going to be on that. In the comics, I'm going to spoil something, so go ahead and skip ahead about 30 seconds if you want to avoid it. In the comics, the 2 major characters that get their head put on the spikes are King Ezekiel and Rosita, and I don't think either of those are going to happen in the show. I think they're both going to, not going to like spoil what I think, but I don't think they're going to go down like that. I think there's a chance that Rick or Maggie could be the big time one put on a spike, and then like because in the comics Ezekiel's the big time one put on a spike, and then Rosita's like the secondary one. I could see Maggie or Rick being the big time one in the show, and then Tara being the secondary one. And that's kind of what I think is going to happen. I'm going to put her at a maybe because I still don't know, but yeah, I'd say there's a pretty solid chance Tara could go down this season. All right, next is Eugene. I don't have a ton to say about Eugene since he's no longer with the Saviors, outside of the fact that I do think he's going to survive for now and well into the future. I don't see any chance of him going down, at least in this season, since he's going to be heavily protected as a gifted mind, and he kind of just completed his whole little fall from grace and redemption arc in the past 2 seasons, and I'm trying to keep this video short, so yeah, I think Eugene's going to be fine. His comic book character, I'm just going to keep spoiling the comics the rest of the way, so I'm sorry, I'll try to warn. But his comic book character is still alive. He's very important. He's kind of became like a right-hand man to Rick in the comics, but that's obviously going to change. But yeah, Eugene should be fine for now and probably into the future quite a ways. Next is Rosita, and I'm going to diverge from the comics a bit and say that Rosita survives the initial confrontation with the Whisperers. In the comics, spoiler, she gets her head cut off and put on a spike as a warning from the Whisperers to Rick and other members of the communities, but her character in the show has evolved way past her comic book character ever did, in my opinion. And I actually see her as one of the leading ladies of the show, and if Maggie goes down, I would kind of have like the leading lady trifecta trio kind of be Michonne, Carol, and Rosita, and I feel like they're all going to be split off in kind of different parts of the show, like community-wise. So I think Rosita's going to be pretty important, and I'm kind of interested to see how her relationship with Eugene kind of evolves over this season, over the time skip and all that. So yeah, I think Rosita is safe next season. Next is Gabriel, and it kind of looks like Gabriel has lost sight in his right eye, according to the trailer, following his infection. And in the comics, Gabriel does die in the war with the Whisperers. It's a little bit later on, and I don't think it'd be something that would be covered this season anyways. But the way he dies is also under circumstances that I can no longer see happening. Show Gabriel and comic Gabriel are similar, but they're different. And due to the lack of sight in his one eye, I still can't confidently say that he's 100% safe. I kind of like I did with Maggie. If I had to lean one way or the other, I'd say he probably does survive this season and maybe next season in season 10 when I think the big time Whisperer War is going to happen. I could see him going down then, but as of right now, I do think Gabriel is relatively safe, but I can't say certainly. So yeah, I have him at a maybe. Next is Aaron, and Aaron's another character who I really don't have a ton to say about. He's one of the few characters that is more or less following his comic route pretty solidly, which is rare in the show anymore. And he's one of the last remaining original Alexandrians. I think the only other one's Enid. So he should be fine this upcoming season. I can't see anything happening to him. I do think he'll survive. All right, next is Enid, and I might sound crazy, but I personally think Enid's one of the safest characters on the show, especially after Carl's death, as, in my opinion, she kind of acts as a bridge between the adults of the show and the younger children like Henry, and then the babies like Gracie, Judith, and little baby Herschel. She's kind of like that middle 15, or depending on the time jump, 15 to 18-year-old adolescent. Carl dying kind of really annoys me for a lot of reasons, but one of them is the impact it's going to have on Enid's character, because Enid basically is kind of comic Sophia. But I mean, I'm sure she'll continue to be a good character. She's grown on me a lot over the last couple of seasons, but I feel she could have grown a lot more in the show with Carl still in the picture, and I still think that's the biggest shame out of all of them, is that it was Scott Gibble's conscious decision to kill off Chandler Riggs and Carl's character. But whatever, nothing we can do about it now. I definitely think Enid's safe next season. All right, next is Jesus, and Jesus should be and better be 110% safe. He's personally one of my favorite comic characters, and I kind of don't think he's gotten a fair shake on the show this far. He's really important in the comics if you haven't read it. Like, he's one of the guys, and he's just been kind of relegated to a background role on the show. I can't even remember anything he did in season 8 off the top of my head, besides in the finale. Yeah, one of the few positive things I can draw about Rick and Maggie both leaving the show is that Jesus should at least get a lot more screen time, and if Maggie goes, he'd probably be the next leader of the Hilltops, so that should be interesting. But yeah, look for Jesus to have a much more involved role in season 9, at least. He'd better, or I'm going to be kind of annoyed, especially if you're killing off two of the best characters in the show in Rick and Maggie. But yep, Jesus should survive, and I'm pretty excited for his character next season. I hope they give Tom Payne some room to actually act on the show because he really hasn't had much of that thus far. Next is Negan, and nope, no chance. Sorry, Negan will definitely be sticking around, especially since Rick is leaving the show. I know a lot of fans aren't big time supporters of him, and a lot of people either lean on one side or the other. You either despise him or you love him, like I do. I think Negan's hilarious, a funny character, a really great villain. But he still does have storyline down the road, and his comic route is still relatively intact. At least it will be until Rick dies, which is going to screw a lot of things up. And it's actually one of the few things I'm looking forward to about Rick's likely death is seeing how Negan reacts to it, since Rick and Negan are both still alive in the comics, and it's going to be interesting to see how Negan reacts to Rick actually going down, especially since Carl went down. But yeah, Negan's probably one of the safest characters in the show. I'd be floored if they killed Negan off with Rick and Maggie likely going to. I just cannot see that happening. All right, next is Gregory. I'm going to keep this short and sweet. I think Gregory will go within the first 2 episodes of the seasons and get his exact comic death. Since Maggie's leaving relatively early on, most likely, I think they will rush to have him commit his assassination attempt on her, which will fail and lead to Gregory getting hung as the first major death of the season. The only twist I could see them throwing on that is I definitely think Gregory's dying, getting hung either way. The only twist I could see is maybe the assassination attempt's successful and that's how Maggie dies, but I kind of don't see that because Gregory's a weasel and an annoying and good character. He's a good character, but he's a weasel and annoying, and despite Maggie leaving and coming to like qualms with the show, I don't think that they would have her die by Gregory's hand. I think that'd be kind of lame. But yeah, Gregory's definitely going to die. I'd put a lot of money on it, to be honest. I'm going to take another divergent from the comics here and say that Ezekiel survives season 9. Like I've already said, Ezekiel was the main casualty from the first blood that the Whisperers draw when he gets his head put on a pike along with Rosita. But I see his death role being filled by either Rick or Maggie, which leads him to surviving and being able to continue to lead the kingdom. I think one of the bigger mistakes the comics made, and they really haven't made that many of them compared to the show, was killing Zeke off a bit too early and leaving the kingdom to Michonne, who later abandons it, and then other secondary characters who really weren't that interesting. So, kind of like Jesus, look for Ezekiel to kind of have a bigger role next season as one of the main leaders of the show, especially if when Rick and Maggie both go, because you're going to need people to step up, and I just don't see Darryl having the acting capacity to act as a leader that can go up and give a great speech or whatever. I can see Ezekiel. Ezekiel has done it. I can see Jesus doing it, and I can honestly see Michonne doing it before Darryl. But I don't want to keep ranting about Darryl being the new leader of the show. I think Ezekiel is going to survive, and I think he's going to have a pretty important role next season. Next up is Judith or Anne or whatever you want to call her. I really don't know. There's zero comic reference to project with her at all, and the whole character involvement with the helicopter is going to be probably just the next interesting storytelling point we get with her. I think she'll live, but I kind of don't have really a lot of guesses outside of that. I'm going to put her at will survive. I don't think she's going to die, but I really don't know anything else about her right now. All right, number one, they threw Alden on the also starring list before my main man Jerry. Jerry's not even going to be covered in this video because he's not on the official main cast list. So my prediction for Jerry is that he's going to survive, by the way. Alden is on there, and I wasn't a huge fan of Alden's character, mainly because I was annoyed with... I was always huge on the whole Glenn and Maggie thing. That was one of my favorite things in the comics. It was one of my favorite things in the show. And watching Alden trying to slide into Maggie's DMs, still kind of after Glenn just recently died, was kind of annoying to me. But I think he's taking Dante's role from the comics, and if that's the case, I think he's relatively safe. If not, I'm really not sure. If there's any future conflict with the Sanctuary, he'd likely be one of the focal points in trying to defuse the hostilities. But kind of like Jadis, who I just covered, I really don't have much to guess on him with right now. I do think he'll survive, but wouldn't shock me if he went down to as like a recognizable but not major character death. Next is Sadiq, and Sadiq is kind of the last major thing that Carl ever did, and kind of Carl's lasting legacy. I don't know if that's over the top, but you kind of get what I mean. And he's also one of the few surviving doctors left in a show that loves to kill doctors off. So I think he's relatively safe just because there's no other doctors, and he's one of Carl's biggest things Carl ever did in the show was saving this guy. I was anxious to see his future relationship with Rick, but since Rick's going, that's kind of ruined. He's one of the more interesting, kind of mysterious guys in the show. I know it's a bit off topic, but I'd love to see a Gabriel and a Sadiq conversation at some point. I think it'd be interesting. I kind of hope they throw that in next season. They might do it, probably not. I think he'll be just fine next season, especially since his comic counterpart is still going strong as well. I'm pretty interested for Sadiq next season. I was also interested for Heath going into season 6, I think, and that sucked. So I don't know, but yeah, I do think Sadiq is safe. All right, next up we've got Judith, and I do think Judith pretty much has to survive at this point. I don't think she's going to die. With Carl and now Rick going, I just can't picture The Walking Dead without a Grimes character, even if it's a relatively minor one like Judith has been up to this point. Because I don't know how far into the future the time skip's going to send us, I really can't project a whole lot more than that. But unless that like 1% theory of Rick not dying and Rick going away kind of happens and he takes Judith as well, I really don't see Judith going anywhere for probably the remainder of the show's lifespan. I just can't see The Walking Dead happening without a Grimes character. And I think they might make the time skip a relatively major one, like maybe 5 to 6 years, to the point where Judith is kind of the age that Carl was in the comics, right when the comics first started, old enough to get what's going on. Kind of like the age of like a Clementine character from the Telltale game series was right at the beginning. I don't know. Judith's probably safe. I can't see them doing anything to her and her dad and her son, all in like, or her dad and her brother, all in like the same year span. Judith will be fine. I just wanted to cover Morgan and prove I didn't forget about him. I'm just going to put him at determinate for now, like I did for Darryl a couple seasons ago, since I have no idea if he's going to come back to the main show or not. And any prediction I would have for him is fully determinate on that, since he has long overstayed his welcome compared to his comic counterpart who died in the No Way Out arc. I don't mean that in a negative way. I love Morgan and his character, but it's just comic-wise, I have nothing to base on him for anymore, and he's not even in the show right now, so don't really know. But I didn't forget about you, Morgan. I love you over on Fear. Dwight is another character who we really don't even know if he'll be back, but I'd have to assume he will be, since in relation to the comics, Dwight still has a ton of story left. I'm going to throw him at a maybe, but I'm kind of leaning towards him surviving. Mostly because Darryl promised to kill him if he ever came back, so who really knows? Dwight's kind of taken a turn from the comics and it's hard to project, and a lot of that is because Rick appoints him as the leader of the militia, but in the comics that is, but in that scenario, Darryl doesn't even exist, and this, that, and the other. A lot of things are different, and if Dwight might not even come back, so I really don't know. I'm going to throw him at maybe, leaning towards no. All right, and last but not least is Alpha. This kind of all depends on how far into the Whisperer story they get this season. Alpha is definitely a lock to die at some point, but I don't think it'll be this season because I highly doubt just based on this show's history, that they can get through the time skip, catch us up on that time skip, kill off 2 of the most important characters in the history of the show, find time to introduce the Whisperers, tell their story, tell us Alpha's story, and then kill her off in 16 episodes. Theoretically, they should be able to get it done. I know Game of Thrones will get it done, but knowing the way AMC likes to drag things out, Alpha would probably be more of a mid to late season 10 casualty. I'm going to put her at... I'm assuming she's going to survive right now. I don't think they'll find the time to get her killed, and that would just... It'd probably almost be a rush, actually. I guess I shouldn't critique the show. I guess we'll have to see the route they want to take, but as of now, I think Alpha will survive Season 9. And with that, that'll wrap up this year's death predictions for The Walking Dead. I know I skipped over a few relatively important supporting characters like Jerry, Cindy, Arat, Scott, Laura, along with Magna's group, who's probably going to feature some important characters down the line. But I kind of just wanted to stick to the major players, try to get through this as quick as efficient as possible. I don't know how long this video is going to be as of recording this outro. I was trying to get it done quick. My luck, it'll still be 30-35 minutes like it always is every year. But I hope you guys enjoyed. If you want to rip me apart on a prediction that you think sucks, feel free to do so below and down in the comments section. I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to subscribe to my channel to keep up with whatever I'm doing. I promise I'm not that boring. I definitely am planning on having a Game of Thrones Season 8 Death Predictions video out before September, so keep an eye out for that. But that's about all the time I've got up to today, so I'll see you guys later. I hope you enjoyed.